Live.
Okay, we are live. This is the afternoon of January 15th. The Senate Education Committee, we just concluded a joint hearing with the House Education Committee and Senate Finance Committee, looking at school funding and school governance in particular. And I just wanted to regroup. Every day that we have this, I think it's useful for us to regroup and sort of debrief a little bit. Just to review the bidding here, which everybody has this in their hands. Tomorrow at 1:30, we're at the Pavilion for a joint hearing, because I almost went to the one. So, and then Friday, we are back in room 11 for a joint hearing.
Which room in the pavilion?
It's one of
the top.
267.
That's probably 267.
Is that down that little hallway?
Yeah, I would assume.
Like narrow.
It's where, you know, what the place, that hallway that we use sometimes, it's the room right, sort of, that you see people in, you know. It's
Where all the people are.
It's where,
Right, exactly.
it's where
Hello,
Elkhart
people in.
meets and others meet. So, and then, so, and again, I'm saying this, but I also want you to all feel free to interject and give me your thoughts about all this as we go. We have an unbelievable amount of information that we need to take in, given the, you know, the major task in front of this committee and the legislature this year on how to fund schools and how to make sure that as we do so, in fact, I should want to put education quality first.
Mhm.
You know, education quality in the context of reforming the way that we fund education. And so the plan is to have as many as we can joint hearings or joint committee meetings with House Ed or Senate Finance, so that if nothing else, because we'd be here till August. With each committee getting the same thing time after time, and they probably reach the point where they would be nauseating to try to do it. So that's the plan. It's just, you know, we're not going to be in this room a lot for the next few weeks, I think. And then once the proposal actually comes out, we're going to be in a way doing it again, because everything for now has been backgrounding and setting us up with the context to understand what's coming, and then we'll have the proposal. We'll have to. So there's that to start with. So and so just also, I met with Beth St. James this morning, just to begin to think through, and this is where I really want your input, to the extent we have days, and I hate to use the term filler because it sounds like it's not important, but deeper background of other parts of what's going on. Like, for instance, when we get a day that somehow, for some reason, we're not doing that which otherwise sucks all the oxygen out of the room. I thought it would be interesting to go back and look at some of the work that this committee has done over the last 4 years, you know, on literacy and otherwise, for instance, because I'd like to hear it. And even those of you who were here, hopefully will find that interesting to hear again, because that is one of them would be how it's been being implemented. So as I talked with Beth this morning, we talked about, and as it turns out, this is beginning to get, I'm finding this being covered through these joint hearings, but we talked about governance, and she talked about the fact that when this is done, when we're done doing this with the Secretary's office, we still may want to do a little bit more on governance that she has. I do. Special ed, Brigham, meetings at Brigham, but you know, we're beginning to get into that through this, so it may be that, you know, what I have on, I've really come up with on the agenda with that is recent legislation, but what we've done over the last 4 years. What else might we want to add to that list?
Well, it's been raised with me by people who have a particular interest that our moratorium on new independent schools has actually hurt special education more than anyone. So I'd like to understand the negative space, you know, of like who was trying to create a school, and is this like having the intended effect, this moratorium?
It's hurt somebody again.
Sorry,
People would tell me it's been hurting
special education,
special ed.
but those are I mean, we just saw it in the data, that it's.
Therapeutic.
Yeah,
skills.
exactly. So what has the impact been of the moratorium?
Yeah, and I will tell you incidentally, I'm digressing for 1 second, that, the way that I'm approaching these joint hearings is that it's sucking in information, not a time other than asking a clarifying question. Then we'll come back and have our own discussions here about the meeting goes, as they maybe begin to get a little political there. I've been trying not to go there like I didn't, want to go today.
And I don't even know if my question was.
It wasn't.
Education
No,
before.
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
I said it because that's a very important thing for us to know. Well, that took us to talk about and think about that. But are there other things in particular that, assuming this was a normal year, and we get moments of being able to have a normal year, are there other areas that particularly we'd like to explore or make sure we have as a committee as background?
I'll wait.
No, send around and stuff.
I like to go past the headlines, and the headline lately has been, civil rights compliance in the Morrisville schools. So I just would love to understand what happened there with a civil rights complaint that was substantiated, and what that implies for our entire.
I guess I hadn't heard that one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a complaint filed with the Federal Agency of Education that students were in a hostile learning environment with a lot of racial slurs and racial and anti-Semitic symbolism around the schools, and that the Civil Rights Division found a substantiated reason to believe that students were in that kind of environment, and that corrective action needs to be taken. I can imagine that's gonna come up in other school districts.
Yeah, I think we talked about the severe and pervasive standard for harassment, hazing, bullying, and harassment last year. And I imagine that particular topic would fall, or would warrant a revisiting of that conversation that we had last year. Because I remember there was a lot of wheels spinning for lack of a better word.
Yeah, so your point is to examine in the context of that, whether we have the right standard.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yes.
Not related to school funding and quality, education quality and such, but the higher education. We would really like to see the vision for Vermont State college system when they're ready to articulate it.
Have we been approached already for that?
Yeah, Vermont State Colleges
Right. Yeah.
have reached out, yes.
Okay.
I can keep going.
And, okay, don't let me forget to elect a clerk before we adjourn. We had a volunteer, so we wanted to have a question. Okay, so let me forget that.
Terry was great at it last year.
Go ahead.
There were a couple issues that were joint between at least economic development and some other committees that we kind of lost the thread because they fell between the committees last biennium. One was actually driver's education. It's just a huge workforce barrier that there's so little opportunity for driver's ed. So I was trying to get transportation to take it on, or education, because it's not an economic development jurisdiction, but we hear that it's like, for anyone to better themselves and not be able to access driver's education, it's a huge issue.
We had a lot of testimony about that from, I think the there's some training at driver's training school in New Hampshire,
Yes.
White Mountain Driver's Ed, and they were talking about being willing to take it over for Vermont too, but
Right.
there was a boundary there, so it just
Yeah.
kind of went away.
Well, I know it's a real issue.
Right.
Real issue, Ryan.
Another one that came up in economic development that wasn't our jurisdiction was youth mental health and cell phone use in schools. We looked at it from a consumer protection perspective, but I think this would have been the right place to have that conversation or continue that conversation about the social media impacts on children. So yeah, that, and then my last, like, I think that this is part of the bigger conversation around education finance, but I have a deep interest in what we do with the school campuses that are no longer going to be schools, and that we have a bonding and funding mechanism for them to turn into housing and community space and things like that.
I know, I will say I do know that that's something they have been thinking about. Is
Right.
putting together a
Yes.
proposal, but it's at least in the.
Exactly. And I don't know if I visited places in other states where they turned a school into like artist housing where they show their work in the former gym. And I just want to make sure we have that, we help Vermonters see the vision of what school campuses can become when they're no longer schools.
So I keep thinking, there is a plan out there, and like, what's happening right now is good news and bad. But the good news is that at the supervisory union level, they're all planning for the worst, and they're trying to come up with ways to repurpose schools that may close. And one of the things I know the governor's interested in is CTE high schools. Maybe in our district, Stafford Technical Center may be the head of the tip of the spear, and then you've got maybe if say Pony High School closed for whatever reason, those students would commute to Fairhaven or whatever, that campus, which is in pretty good shape. So I just get the feeling that there's really a plan out there that's going to get dumped on us, and we're just marking time here.
Well, so we should probably, as a committee, step back from making too many assumptions about what's gonna happen, because we haven't seen, I haven't seen that. There's the whole plan, it's emerging, so, and it's gonna come through the governor's office, so I think we need to just kind of a little bit wait.
Right.
Until we actually have it, to make sure so that we know what it doesn't mean, or what it might or might not lead to, but nevertheless, I note the discussion we had here about when that, it's something that we should be thinking about, perhaps, no matter what, because as schools close, what do you do with what was the school, and so there's always an opportunity there, so.
I just use those examples in our district because I didn't know that somebody else's.
Can I ask a question, Senator Williams? Are you, when you say it's gonna get dumped on us, like, do you want the pace to change or anything, or you're just?
I'd like it to. I mean, I was told that the first 2 weeks we're gonna sit down, we're gonna come up with a plan, and we're gonna fix it, or try something different.
So you want the plan sooner than later?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're trying to spoon feed it out because of the table setting for new people and for, I mean, so I don't think anyone's trying to keep anything from anybody. I'm just curious how you would want to see that look, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. I was only gonna say, I think that that's right, and that there's a whole, probably a month of testimony with the proposal getting dropped actually at the governor's budget address.
Right.
So here, that's coming right up.
Yeah.
And, but we'll hopefully have to spend enough time ahead of time getting our arms around things that we're ready to move quickly when the time moves, so.
I think just similar to what Senator Williams was talking about, I think there was just this lingering fear about rushing, because I feel like, you know, once things start picking up after a month or two, we've been here now for at least one term, and things start to pick up, and then there's just this anxiety of looking at very impactful policies with only, several weeks or just 1 month of time, and so, but I get I get both sides of this.
Well, I'm with you on that. I'm somebody who believes in really careful work.
Yeah.
And, through my time in the legislature, I have been one of those who wants to be careful about every I being done properly. And so at least I'm coming to it with that mindset. So I'm sorry, you've been very patient.
Try to be. So, first I'll address this issue about, which I think Senator Williams brought up, more about how do we dedicate the time to this very relevant topic. We have to do it correctly to everyone's point. Why don't we consider like compromising morning committees, like, maybe not meeting in a morning committee, every other day and focus on the education issue.
That's what I thought we were gonna do.
We've got 4 to maybe 6 committees engaged in this, and it's serious work. To your point, it's got to be done correctly. We have a very compressed. This timeline for legislation is insanely quick, and that's just an option. Just something more creative. Think outside the box about how can we create more time in the day.
And you're saying once they drop what they're thinking, or do we work on something
Just
prior
go.
to that?
Like, start on Tuesday morning, and that's just what we do. We're education for all of Tuesday and all of Thursday or something like that. Just,
Well, the other possibility is Mondays.
Yeah.
well, something, because at the pace we're
Right.
going, we're gonna run against the stocks.
Yeah.
And I know that,
I'll see you guys on Tuesday.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I say this at my own peril as well, but what feels important about adding time to the calendar to me is that we go out and see what different communities look like as we have this conversation and we make sure they feel heard. So I would advocate for, 5 or more Mondays that we go listen in different parts of the state, Mr. Chair. I mean, that seems like the way to build buy-in.
Did you do that when you were because the nice thing is I had 2 towns that totally lost their schools and their concerns about community. And then, I think it'd be important, maybe not as much as you want to go out, but to see some. But we all know Lincoln, look at Lincoln, Vermont. They put their foot down and said, we're gonna keep our school no matter what. There's some people in that town who are not happy about it because they can't afford your taxes, so.
Yeah.
I really want us to be careful about moving this discussion there
Yeah.
too early, because the secretary has made clear that the number one on what she's talking about is ahead of funding is quality of education. That's what I want to make sure we stay
Yes.
focused on, is
Yeah,
quality of education. I think she's trying to do that.
right.
And I think that the full school does. I want to be careful we don't just move over in one direction too quickly with our thinking. But noting the possibility of going out to communities is a good thing to note. So let's see what happens, obviously. And yeah, it's daunting. And how we do it is good. We're gonna have to figure that out once we have a better feel for the scope of what we're facing and what the timeline is. So, yes.
let's go back maybe 15 minutes to Senator Ron Hinsdale's comment about repurposing. I think that in this conversation about schools, one of the considerations has to be right up front is if there's a community that's going to experience some type of repurposing, consolidation, et cetera, that the reuse of that facility be a prime factor so the community can get their head around it. Because if all they know is they're losing something
Yes.
and they're not gaining something, whether it's an artist colony or otherwise,
Right. Childcare center,
then we've lost the battle.
yeah.
And I just hope that that's a significant portion of the Secretary of Education's perspective when they start briefing, that factor be considered right along with the quality of education and sustainability, et cetera.
Okay, I'll be careful, but, and we are going back to Act 60 and 68 again, and the equity in education. And, that was in 1979, and now we're here, we need to make sure that whatever we do, quality in education EQS is number one in everybody's mind. So we don't get back to where we were when that bill came out. They had to have Act 68 to fix it, you remember? And we've just kind of gotten away from the intent of that whole concept. So we want to make sure we don't make that same mistake again. I don't want to be part of that.
You don't want to put a big mistake.
I thought you were gonna take it in another direction that I think is important, which is that we are on the same page about what we mean by quality in education. Because it's not just college readiness, I mean, and I think there are a lot of young people who miss out on important life skills and tactile skills that they should have access to before we decide to put some students in one place and some in another. And make sure they know they can make plenty of money, without going to college, and getting into apprenticeships and things like that. So, I just want to make sure we don't define quality in an elitist way, as a assumption before we've had that discussion.
Don't have to worry about that with me.
Like, I can't build stairs, that's like a really hard thing to do, and our tradespeople have really incredible skills that we don't value enough.
That everybody doesn't matter your education level, as long as you're educated and get a good job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the concept of CTE high school is you're gonna build stairs, you get the math skills
Right,
that you need so you can do that.
yeah,
And, I never paid attention to geometry. I like to build stairs though, and I do it the hard way. If I'd known then what I was gonna wanna do now, I would have probably paid attention to that.
yeah,
So,
That's a great example of integrated teaching, right?
Yeah.
But actually learn math skills by building stairs.
that's a hard way.
Use that as the.
And then I go back
Well,
to,
no, I'm sorry, but the school uses that as the vehicle for teaching math.
right,
Because it gets kids involved.
It's like on a
interested in
construction
who
site, you gotta
wouldn't have
square
that.
something
Yeah.
up, you need to use geometry and.
All of a sudden you're interested, yeah.
yeah,
So, so incidentally, we have a volunteer for clerk. And, before I forget to do it, would somebody like to nominate? You volunteered the other day, we were sitting here, right? Yeah.
I was gonna say, he doesn't look very chipper about this one.
I have the skills, I guess. I didn't screw it up too bad.
Did a
Well,
great
of course,
job.
the committee, will make it easy for you. But, you
I just had a general observation. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're supposed to make an
I was looking
observation.
for a motion. Oh, observation's okay too.
Oh, it's an observation, not a motion. So I'm not sure what the house's routine is going to be as the weeks unfold here.
Let's
Oh, okay, I'm
first make a nomination.
Oh, I nominate Senator Cruz.
I second it.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Senator Williams?
I,
Okay.
before he changes his name.
You are the clerk, so I can report that to the, in fact, Will, can you report that to?
Yeah.
Because I want us to have it done by the end of the day.
I just want to give it to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for volunteering. I appreciate it.
The House Education Committee, their routine. So, to the point made earlier, we have a lot on our plate. A 3 o'clock stop, if that's a routine, from say 1:30 to 3 o'clock, it's not enough time. I'm wondering if they can acquiesce, being that these are all afternoon committees that are being impacted, that they shift their chamber meetings to the morning as opposed to the afternoon. That's my.
This is a big enough topic that that's a discussion worthy of being had. And if not, what we should do is think about how we can use this hour afterwards really effectively towards where we're trying to go. Today, the next few days, we're just kind of debriefing after, but we might want to get a lot more, we might want to really take advantage of this time. And by the way, we should also just put out there for ourselves to think about is evening meetings.
Here.
And hearings or meetings. Well, it's probably because of the system, But anyway, just to the extent we need to find time, we should,
I just need notifications,
Yeah.
because I'll stay over
Yeah.
here then.
we'll do that, we'll figure this out. But I guess what we could, in short run, let's just keep taking the information we're taking in, being ready for the proposal to come, and then really assessing how we move forward.
Yeah.
That makes sense, okay.
I just think there's a lot of levers we can pull
Yeah.
to maximize our afternoon time.
Yeah.
Even if, right now, we're only from 1:30 to 3, we're not gonna.
No, that's not gonna do it. We're gonna have to work, no matter what, even if the house stays at 3, we're gonna have to continue a really meaningful way to take this.
Suppose we could ask our Senate to start, do it 9.
Yeah.
That way after 9, we can they could join us, or we could join them.
Okay.
I like to keep busy, but what are the goals and objectives? I mean, when are we gonna get those? Are we gonna come up with them collectively with the committees, or
Goals and objectives.
for all this extra time we're looking?
Well, I think we'll know, we can really have, again, we can really have that discussion once the governor's proposal's on the table. And then we can figure out what it's gonna take to,
So next week for us is still getting more information, we got more meetings and people bringing in, because the 27th, right, am I right, that the day he's doing his budget speech?
yes.
26.
Yeah, so next week will be more of this.
Okay.
But we should also be thinking, I'm really glad you brought this point up, Senator Lee. We gotta use this hour well going forward. So, but I'm gonna meet with, okay, it's the 20, it is the 20th, so that, yeah. So, we to use this hour well, or hour and a half well, because we're going to go to 4:30, if that's okay. And we'll have it to you, what are the, kind of your rules?
Officially, it's 4:30,
Yeah.
but since this is an afternoon committee, there is an understanding that I can potentially start later,
Okay,
stay later in the day. So it's not a hard cutoff for 4:30.
Well, when I'm gonna meet with Beth on Friday to really, think about what we can continue to be really productive here. And I'm gonna then start thinking about, even if the house stays at 3, what we can do for an hour and a half or 2 hours afterwards to move us toward the goal.
I don't know exactly what I'm proposing here, but I may have mentioned, I mean, I came from finance to this committee because once the two committees start to diverge, there's a collision that happens at the end, and we have quality and student outcomes somehow at odds with our new financing vision. And that committee's doing too much education policy, and we don't know enough about finance policy, and everything falls apart. I would love some generative discussion time with Senate Finance, where we get to talk about the whole system. Because I'll just say, as just a senator and not a member of a particular committee, I still have pretty strong feelings about pulling apart the property types that we have in the state and reassessing how we use land and how we tax land to relieve the burden on homestead property taxpayers. Obviously, that's going to be their work, but at some point we're going to hear that, you know, how we set the rates impacts the quality of our schools, etc. So I just want to be able to have some time when our committees are in really big thinking, united conversation. You know, that can't happen like in the last few weeks, basically.
Yeah. And I think there's a want on their part to do that.
Yes.
So, and I appreciate that they're trying to get grounded as well, even in the non-finance part of this.
Exactly.
That's where I headed toward the proposal. Maybe you'd be here with me on Friday afternoon. Stay with that to the planning. Sure. Yeah, for sure. Let's do that. So I know we in natural resources this morning, the chair, we had a little discussion about, how we operate in the committee, and by that, in part it was, I am constitutionally an informal person, but I have come to recognize the importance of formality, and because of the tone it sets, et cetera, in committee. So, assuming this makes sense to people, this discussion we've had right now, for instance, it hasn't been like waiting and saying, Mr. Chair, and that's fine. This was, but when witnesses are here, and we'll have to go more formal, I'll refer to, Senator Weeks, Williams, and Mr. Chair, and we will have to maintain that level of formality just for that, because it's a good practice and shows how seriously we take the job. So, but again, I love this. This is what, that was just fine what we did in that. In fact, it was perfect. So anything else that people want to, So again, I have been, I'm going to continue, you think you'll see, not engage too much with these, as like things get said that I don't agree with, for instance, in larger context. I'm just kind of letting them, just taking in the information from the witnesses, and then we come back and have a discussion without getting into
Well, I think some of us have seen the importance of that. And I just hope first of all, the experience of each community's tax rate and CLA is so unique to that community that any broad statement is bound to be correct in some places and incorrect in others, and make people lose faith that we know that their experience is different than in other communities. And just in general, I think it's very valuable if we stay very high-minded about how we talk about this, and not, I have said in my school district, if you come saying that this is somehow on rural Vermont to solve, we don't get anywhere, so just for me, remembering that we have a statewide problem to solve, and every community brings its unique opportunities and challenges, so that people are listening to us, and that they feel like we're really listening to them as well, and not pointing fingers and getting provincial will be really important.
Okay.
So I took a picture of the wall before I left this room last May. We actually had a lot of good stuff going on, and I'm thinking about, this is the hot button item right now, but eventually we've got to get back and look at where we're going to go as a committee. If you want that data, you may have it actually. The bills that we had them on the whiteboard, and we had a bunch of stuff that was in the committee bill. We got both the House and the Senate committee bills.
We have a couple. This is potentially an interesting discussion. Let's assume for the moment we didn't have this major task in front of us this year. In a way, that's what we're beginning to get at. What are some of the areas you would like to explore, not you, but all of us would like to explore? I guess maybe we did that a little bit earlier, but are there other kind of testimony might you be interested in hearing? Sometimes just shining a light and exploring things. You don't have to do it now, but if you have things that we should put on the list of things we'd like to get to, if we can.
There's a list of required briefings that AOE has to give us. I think the Chancellor of the Vermont State University.
Yeah.
So those we gonna wait till this is over with to fit those in, or if we can squeeze some of that in?
Yes, that's what we're doing. We're trying to squeeze them in when we can. And maybe that's what we do with our hour and a half afterwards. Okay. So.
I mean, as you asked that, I just thought, what am I missing? And I have, without trying to sound too partisan, not been paying attention to the national level. But every once in a while I hear we may not have a national agency of education. I don't even know what that means for us or what it doesn't mean. So I think those conversations will get very real or come to the fore in the next few weeks. And we'll need to be able to be fluent in that conversation to the extent possible.
Definitely affect funding.
Right.
Yeah. But it may simplify things because we won't have some of the regulatory requirements that come from the funding that we get.
So many strings attached.
So,
Okay. Everybody good for today? Good for that? Okay, we are adjourned until tomorrow at 1:30.